Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. Welcome back to the Decent Sabbath Young podcast for all things heart of Midlothian. Join you as always as myself, Ewan and Alan. We do hope you are all good and well. This episode doesn't need sort of any introduction, as you can probably imagine. Obviously, the main was talking points for this week's episode is obviously going to be the sacking of our ex manager Robbie Neilson, with the news that you just with that as a start to that. Look at the freeze frame on that. What
Wow.
has happened there? What has happened? See that? this
That's
is
that's
just
quality.
this is
That's
just
thumbnail material.
this is just premium value, mate. This is ridiculous. Now
Oh
we can.
wow.
Was it? I can't even start this on a serious note now. We can, I mean, well, let's just was it crack on, and was it you guys was it have the cover? There we go, fantastic.
Oh, we're back.
So obviously, of course, we're going to be talking about the news that broke out on Sunday with obviously Robbie the departing from the club, and we'll also talk about yesterday's news as well, which was on a Monday. We'll with Stevie Naismith being the interim manager for the remaining 7 games of the season, and obviously with names all were ready flying and about for the vacant spot in the dugout. And yeah, we'll just talk about the ever-growing drama that is heart of Midlothian. So we do hope you enjoyed this week's episode. So, of course, before we dive straight into things, if you are a fan of the Since I Was Young podcast, please think of subscribing to our YouTube as well. And if you want to catch us up on any of our socials as well, they will all be in the description and on screen. So feel free to check those out. So, Alan, I don't know about you, but even after the game on Saturday, which was 6 losses out of 7 at home to St Mirren, which was a 2-goal defeat. I'll be very honest, I really didn't actually expect Hearts to pull the trigger on Robbie. I thought personally something had to be done, but I genuinely it was a bit of a surprise in the sense that when the news broke out on the day after, I was very kind of like, oh, they've actually done that. All right, okay, cool. So it was a bit of a surprise in my eyes because I didn't think they would actually do it, and obviously there's been many opinions on the matter as well, regarding was there any point to do it with only 7 games to actually go. Is Naismith the right man to actually take us through these last was it 7 games as well? So there's a lot to talk about in that sense, Alan. So um with that in mind, so what was your sort of initial reaction to uh Sunday's news?
I think much like you, I was a bit kind of not really surprised. I think they had to do something. I think if if you're talking like before the game
Yeah.
and like if somebody had said beforehand, look, we're going to lose this game 2-0, I would probably think, right, you know what, he'll probably go after that.
Mm.
Because the away games that we've lost recently, you can kind of go, well, they've been away from home. We're never that good away from home. But everybody was sort of looking at the St Mirren game at home and saying, right, this is a home game. This is winnable. Let's win it.
Yeah.
And obviously, to lose in that manner, not just the scoreline, just overall. I mean, I wasn't there, but I've been laid up all week with COVID. For those that know, follow me on social medias and stuff. So I've not had the best of weeks, to be honest. And that kind of summed it up even better. I was thinking, oh, Saturday afternoon kickoff, let's see if we can get back to winning ways, something a wee bit positive, and then we go and lose 2-0. So yeah, I think Robbie was in a position where he had to go after that. I don't think it's funny, like I was talking about this again on social media because that's pretty much where I've lived for the last week. Um, the thing with like Robbie previously, like after the Brora game, for example, there was like obviously there was lots of people calling for him to get sacked after Brora,
Mm.
and I was one of those that said no, he shouldn't, because there were reasons as to why that happened, and Robbie came out after the Brora game and basically said, this team still has that team of relegation, it's still lurking and all the rest of it. And he was very forceful and said, look, this is what we're going to do and this is how it's going to be done. And the club gave him time to do it and he did it, turned it around and obviously got us to where we are now. But where we are now, I didn't see anything from Robbie that made me think he could turn this round. And to me, that was kind of the final point. It was a case of there were lots of things that had obviously gone against Robbie at this point. Rumors of dressing room unrest, players not getting picked, and some players getting picked that probably shouldn't have been. But yeah, like it was one of those, like I know you say like there was a bit of surprise. I was surprised that the club did it because I didn't expect Robbie Neilson to be in charge next season, um, regardless of whether we finish third or fourth or wherever. But I thought they would have given him to the end of the season, or at least till after the derby, to try and get a kind of positive result in that game. But I'm happy that they've acted when they've acted because I think it's the right time to do it.
So in that same like sort of regards as well, like I do agree in the sense that you know, like as I said before, there's obviously been a lot of like sort of like split like opinions in terms of whether it was the right time to actually do it as such. And like I mean, like you was it send me the links as well, like to the Andrew Kinley's like sort of interviews as well, both which I think were actually quite the good and like sort of interviews as well. And I think one of the things like that I mentioned in terms of like where we want to be in terms of stature as a club as well. Like if like if this was Hearts like maybe like 3 or 4 was it seasons ago, and thinking, well, does it really actually matter if we finish third or fourth? Because like obviously like was it European spots as well, like etc. And then obviously things like to whoever wins the Scottish Cup as well, like etc. Like when that comes into like account. So I think I think you are right in the sense that in what they've had to do in terms of actually making the decision, I think it's right. Was it like he said himself as well, and like from my own like sort of was it himself as well, where like I mean, I was at the game like on Saturday, and the performance overall, just from start to finish, it just felt hopeless. There was no drive to like to be like to actually take the game. Even the players as well. The only kind of player that kind of like like kind of stuck out was Michael Smith, like who like was it who was a 34-year old. There wasn't even an actual like an actual leader on that pitch, and even in the manner like that we can like was it can seeded the goals as well. Like it just felt like dreadful. And I mean on a side note as well, like was it credit to the Mirren fans, because from the very start till the very end, they just sang and they sang, and they could was it, and they were the atmosphere. Like in that the stadium. Genuinely, there was no atmosphere. There was no singing at all. It was just a dreary, experience throughout the whole
Yeah.
game from the Hearts fans as well. Um, so kind of like sort of onto that point as well. So obviously Kinley was also obviously was touching on was it summer and the January recruitments as well. You know, again, this seems
Mhm.
to be quite a split like sort of was a mindset as well. But he mentioned that they were actually going to try to shrink the squad size throughout January, and we actually ended up doing the opposite as well. Like we got a few like sort of loan players in like as well, and the point of that was to obviously get it to that kind of happy medium, because it is obviously hard to um keep a big squad was happy. So in that same regards as well, and obviously to the performances that have been as of late throughout the last sort of a month or so, do you feel as if the players have got to take some sort of like bigger role in the responsibility for these like sort of like was like these dismal like performances, or do you think it kind of lays more down to how Robbie's been trying to set up and how he's been trying to get the players to actually play?
I think it's a really, really interesting one. I think like people that have listened to this and have spoken to me know that I was a Robbie fan, to a point, obviously, but I'm not going to sit there and say that he's not to blame because I think he absolutely was. But I think the blame gets shared across the team and recruitment as well. I think
Mm,
the players that we have, like, and I said this a couple of days ago, you know, it's a good team of players there. It is a good
mm,
team of players there that have all, those that have been brought in recently for six-figure fees. They don't just become bad players overnight. Like,
no.
that's the issue. Whether they down tools because they didn't want to play for Robbie anymore, or whether they got annoyed at the way things were going, I don't know. But I think the fact is, particularly like we're talking about St Mirren, for example, for the last few weeks, we've been playing pretty much the same way,
Mm,
um, without seeing any sort of reaction, any sort of, change, despite Robbie saying there will be a reaction, there will be a reaction every week.
yeah.
But we're yet to see that, or we never really saw a reaction, nothing changed. Um, so yeah, like I say, you can put the blame at Robbie's feet, and I think majority of people did, which is why Robbie is no longer in charge. However, the players that we have need to have a look at themselves. And I hope that quite a few of them are looking at themselves and going, I've cost a man his job because, albeit, I understand if they got frustrated and didn't want to play for him anymore. I get that. But you're representing Heart of Midlothian, you're representing the fan base, and it's particularly at Tynecastle,
Mm,
you expect nothing but 100% effort. And I think in recent weeks, months, we haven't seen that. Um, and so, yeah, like I said, there's an element of that. One person that I don't think got anywhere near enough criticism that potentially should have done is also Joe Savage. I really like Joe Savage. I think he's been a breath of fresh air in terms of recruitment at the club, and I think he's done incredibly well. However, for me, and again, I've said this before, January, the window of January that we had was not good enough, in terms of what we needed and when we needed it. You spoke about Andrew McKinley saying that in January we wanted to let players go rather than bring players in. Didn't manage to do that because of injuries to Halkett and Craig Gordon, so we couldn't get players out because we'd already lost a couple. But I think, and again, this is me, saying it purely off the bat. I just think that they spent so long trying to get Callum Patterson, and they put so much emphasis on getting Callum Patterson when that deal was virtually impossible. Sheffield Wednesday made it very clear that they wanted to keep him. When we heard that, it should have been right. We're not getting Callum Patterson. Let's go and get another right back because we were clearly wanting to do that. I'm not saying Callum Patterson would have come in and played right back, but you look at the team, the way it's set up. Michael Smith being in his mid-30s now, Nathaniel Atkinson not getting a look in, it makes sense that the chances would have been that Callum Patterson would have come in and been the right back. But we never did that for whatever reason. He went and got Garang Kuhl, who we've yet to really see do anything. And, as much as I want to rate Garang Kuhl, and I understand, people have again laid the blame at Robbie Neilson for not using him. When I've seen him play and when I've seen him being given little brief appearances, he doesn't look physically ready for this level of football and this style of football in Scotland. And that's something that they should be doing their homework. This guy, he's 18 years old. He's a kid. He's a young kid that looks like he'd get blown over by a gust of wind, and listen, I'm exactly the same. Like it's not he's not got the physical build to play in Scottish football. And I don't know whether Joe Savage just did that deal to sort of blow his own trumpet and say, oh, look at what I've managed to get you, a shiny Australian wonder kid that everybody's talking about. Did Robbie really want him? I don't know. Robbie's not using it, or he wasn't using him. So there could be that element. But yeah, like I said, there's lots of things that you can kind of point at and say they haven't been good enough across the last few weeks and months. And going back to the players again, Andrew McKinley said it. We should be the third best team in the country. We should be. We have probably the third biggest budget in the country, and that has to equate to something. Um, but certainly over the last few weeks and months, we've not been anywhere near that, and that for me, it's good because like Andrew McKinley was talking about it, and he said, it's not been a knee jerk reaction. It's not been, in relation to the St Mirren defeat. It's been coming for weeks, and that's refreshing to see because obviously it shows that the board have seen the way things are going. And like I said before, at least after Brora, there were some signs of positivity that Robbie could turn it around. Whereas now, after St Mirren, you're looking at it going, okay, we've got 7 games to go, and it's only going to go one way at this point, which is not acceptable.
Interesting thoughts, Alan. I mean, so I kind of like looking at like sort of like a bit more forward now. Like, so obviously, I wasn't necessarily expecting to get a brand new manager like sort of in towards like sort of this time of the seasons as well, because like well, like it makes no like sort of was it sense to get like was it somebody in permanently now. So obviously they took the decision yesterday to give it to Stevie Naismith, which I think if you balance it out, it kind of makes sense as well. Like was it he's been doing well? Was it with the under 18s? He's been was it a coaching like sort of with the Scotland squad as well. So and just his overall sort of character in general, like as a player, like like he's played with some of the players still in that squad as well. So in that regards, would you say that he was the right person in terms of the was it of the situation that we have to take the club through like these next was it 7 games, or do you feel as if obviously we've not seen him actually as was it him as like a coach in the dugout, and do you feel as if it could be like towards the last like sort of few games in the split as well. Do you think that we'll be grasping like at draws a wee bit?
I think Naismith is the logical one
Mm.
to give it to. I think we also have to say, obviously, Lee McCulloch's been let go as well. Robbie's assistant, they've kept Gordon Forrest. I can only imagine for his experience rather than anything else. So it's going to be Stevie Naismith, the lad McAvoy that was with Naismith in the academy, and Forrest as well as the sort of three to the end of the season. I like Stephen Naismith. I think Stephen Naismith is a guy that hopefully will take no shit. He certainly took no shit as a player. So if he's carried that on to his coaching career, then that would be positive. He's also obviously been involved in the Scotland setup, the coaching with Scotland as well. So that's hopefully giving him some extra insight into things. I I felt like it was always going to go that way. I know people were saying, "Oh, let's go and get a permanent manager now." It was never going to happen. 7 games to go. The market for a manager is more likely to be better in the summer, because obviously managers will lose their jobs between now and the end of the season. You know, as I say, I like Stephen Naismith. It'll be very, very interesting to see what he does. Somebody pointed it out that during his time as the academy manager, they've been playing the 3-4-3 system, the same as the first team. But I think that was at request of the first team to sort of say,
Right.
play the same way in the academy so that, when young players can get adjusted to playing the system that the first team played, which makes sense.
Hmm.
But I hope now that Robbie and Lee are away, it's a case of, right, we don't need to play 3-4-3 anymore. Um, let's play to the strengths of the players that we have. And it'll be interesting to see what Steven does. We haven't even spoken about what his first game's going to be. certainly, certainly a baptism of fire, if you will. But I think
Hmm.
the thing about Stephen Naismith that I like, and I'm pleased that he's been given the job. It's, to me, you speak about like the players need to have a reaction to Robbie going, and they need to show that it's like a weight lifted, and let's get behind this new manager and let's go again. Stephen Naismith, like, take nothing away from him. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, he's only going to be the interim manager, and then we'll get somebody better in the summer. We'll get somebody, maybe a bit more experienced or a name from left field in terms of outside of the typical Scottish bubble of managers." People forget, if Stephen Naismith does well over these next 7 games and gets us third place, he could be in with a shout. And I'm
Yeah.
not, I'm not going to sit here and say that Stephen Naismith should be the next permanent manager, because I think we should be looking a little bit more ambitious than that. But
Mm.
if he secures us third place and we're playing good football, you couldn't, ignore him and say, "Oh, well, we're just, thanks for your efforts, but back to the academy with you, or away you go and manage somewhere else."
Mm.
But yeah, like I say, it's, I know, like you said about Stephen Naismith, knowing some of the players in the dressing room, and he will, he's played with some of them, as you say, but it has to be a different dynamic now. Stephen Naismith has to go into that first team dressing room and go, "I'm the boss." Like, you know, that's going to be interesting. I think
Mm.
one of the things with Robbie that I've said before was, I think Robbie Neilson just tried to be everybody's pal and tried to keep everybody happy, to an extent, because he didn't want people falling out with him. And obviously, in the end, players have clearly fallen out with him, and that's been his undoing. But Stephen Naismith needs to go into that dressing room with a bit of authority and say, "Right, you know what, this is how we're going to do it." And as I say, and I've said this before as well, first game that Stephen Naismith is going to be in charge of is an Edinburgh derby. Stephen Naismith should not have to do anything with those players before an Edinburgh derby, because if you're not capable of getting yourself up and raising your levels for a game at Easter Road against Hibs, I don't want you playing for my club. It's as simple as that. Like, you know, I don't know how they're going to train this week. I don't know what's going to happen. But if you, and considering how big a game it is, because Hibs haven't been great recently either, their form's been just as bad as ours. If you can't raise your levels for a game like that, there's no hope for you.
I know, Alan. I mean, even in that same sense as well. Like, I mean, even though Hibs and their form have not been particularly amazing either, if it's anything like how we played, was it on Saturday, we'll get absolutely steamrolled, and I'm not even joking you. Like, we will get absolutely steamrolled. I mean, in that like sort of same sense as well, Alan. Like, I mean, it makes it kind of a bit more interesting because obviously there's a lot at at stake for us in terms of obviously we like we want to finish for for third place. I mean if like I mean there was the financial sort of aspect as well where there's about five or six what was it a million quid at stake as well if things develop as they did at the start of was it this was it a season for the next was it season as well. So because obviously the performances have been so flat, so there's no hope at all. Like let's just say, do you think there's going to be enough time to muster up any sort of per uh, uh, performances to actually scrape us through to try and get third place? Because even last week or the week before, I'll be very honest, it's not as it's not that I'm saying that I don't think we can do it. Like I think we're probably, you know, in a position now where because we've sacked Robbie, it's a case of right, it's now or never. You know, can you sit there and say that you have the utmost confidence that things will actually change and we will have that the kind of that sort of first game new manager sort of the bounce back? Because obviously like you said as well, with your first game being like a derby away from home, what I mean, if you want to talk about was it pressure, what I mean, it's it's a huge ask. Even like if Robbie didn't get sacked, it's a huge ask in terms of the performances that we've actually sort of put in the this last month or so.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think, like I said, I don't know what Naismith's going to do this week with them, but I think it needs to just be a case of just get back to basics. Like, we heard Robbie talking about it for a long time. We need to do the basics. We need to do the basics. Andrew McKinley said in his interview as well that he was at the Orium and he spoke to the players and basically said to them, you know, get back to playing how you can play. Show what you can do because, like I said earlier, we've got a good group of players. And clearly there's been some unrest, clearly there's been some unhappiness, but that should be put to the side now. That should be put to the side, and these players should be told, right, you know what, you're a good team, so let's just go and play like a good team should play. You know, those that fell out with Robbie, those that were not very happy under Robbie, should now be looking at it going, okay, you know, for example, I'm going to pluck a name out of nowhere, somebody like Alex Cochrane or Nathaniel Atkinson, two players that apparently were not very happy for different reasons. They should now be looking at it going, okay, manager's away. It's a shame to see him go, but this is what I wanted. So, now I want to get back into playing and having a go again. But yeah, I don't know. Like this week, I'm not expecting them to be working on systems and shapes and all that stuff. I think it's just purely going to be a case of getting back to enjoying football and enjoying playing again because clearly there were some that were not enjoying it. But yeah, like I say, it's a massive gamble that the club have taken, a massive gamble. But it was a gamble they needed to take, and I hope for their sake that it does work. You know, we're still we're not completely out of it for third place. I think people there's maybe a slight overreaction when people say, "Oh, we're not going to finish third. We're not going to finish third." I think the fact is the club have made this decision to give us the best possible chance of finishing third, and I think as well we have to remember that we've made this gamble, we've taken this chance to get Robbie out and bring in a new face and then Stevie Naismith, but Aberdeen have still got difficult fixtures to play. Between now and the split, they've got Ross County away on the Friday night, and then we play obviously the Edinburgh Derby on the weekend. Hibs have got some tricky games coming up, and one of those two will probably have to play us at Tynecastle in the split as well. So you know, I'm not I'm not going to sit here and say it's all doom and gloom and we're not going to finish third. I wouldn't be surprised if we missed out on it, but equally, I wouldn't be surprised if we managed it.
Hmm.
But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and I hope for the sake of Andrew McKinley, I hope for the sake of the Hearts board, I hope for the sake of the players, Stephen Naismith, everybody at the football club, I hope that we do it because you know, as much as obviously, and the fans as well, we want another European run. We want another, European adventure. That was great last year, or this year rather, to do it. You know, it would be amazing to do it again. Um, and that's why the club have done what they've done and moved him on. But only time will tell if it works or not. And I certainly hope that it does. Even not even just for Stephen Naismith because I like Stephen Naismith. I'm gonna you know I've been called a happy clapper and a Robbie Neilson fan. So I don't want to say too much because I'll end up being called a happy clapper and a Stephen Naismith fan before too long. But nah, listen, I think the main thing in the short term is get the players back on side and get everybody back to playing how we know we can play because this is a very good group of Hearts players. It's a good squad that has been assembled there. Some of them haven't been used to the best of their ability. Some of them haven't been showing the best of their ability, but now there's no excuses and there's no hiding place for these players. It's like, okay, your attitude hasn't been good enough, your performances haven't been good enough. We've got rid of a manager. Now it's up to you because as much as Stephen Naismith is almost kind of auditioning for the full-time management role, every single one of the players in that first team squad should be thinking, hang on a minute, if a new manager comes in the summer, I might be away, and they're all playing for their futures as well. So hopefully there's enough motivation there for them all to now just go, right, let's get down to business and let's get back to playing how we can play.
So, well, I mean, saying that, mate, I mean, as you've just talked about as well, like, in terms of like, like if Naismith, like, could potentially be a candidate, like, for the vacant, like, uh, was it a manager's role. I need names, Alan. I need names. Obviously, there have been some, like, some, like, suggestions, like, sort of going about, some ridiculous ones as well. But I mean, I don't know what your thought in it is on it, but like, I had a conversation with this. Uh, was it on the day of of the actual the game as well? And to be honest, I'm not really wanting, like, I mean, because I've seen names being thrown about, like, what was it, like, for example, like, was it Scott, was it Robinson, was it Derek McInnes as well? And for all as much as they're good coaches in their own right for this league, it's not really names that I really want. I mean, well, for me personally, it's not really particularly names that I want to be, you know, like, like, almost like sort of trying to steer like away from, like, because, like, it's the same kind of football. It's the same sort of style as such, where it doesn't really scream like, for like, sort of, like, progressive, like, sort of football, because I think that was one of the main things with Robbie is the kind of what was it in terms of trying to actually move forward, like you couldn't really see where he could take Hearts to like that next sort of step. So, from your opinion, like it doesn't really have to be a specific name, but like what kind of coach or what kind of a manager would you like in visage in the dugout for like sort of next season, mate?
Well, I think it's really interesting, and I think you're right in what you say about the sort of Derek McInnes, Stephen Robinson kind of managers that have been floated about. And as much as I'm sure they would have their merits, I, like you, don't want that,
Mm.
and I don't think a lot of fans would. Um, I think, as I say, Stephen Robinson's done fantastically well at St Mirren. You can't deny that.
Yeah.
There was other names like Martindale at Livingston, another one that had been mentioned because of how well they've done there. But you then have to scale that up to coming to Hearts, and would they be able to do that? Would they be able to handle that? I don't know whether they would, and I don't know whether the fans would let them. To be honest,
Mm.
Derek McInnes would be the most dull, boring appointment you could ever possibly imagine. Um, yeah, I just think that like from within the Scottish football bubble, if you will, there's not one manager available that I look at and go, yeah, I'd be happy to have
Yeah.
you in the dugout at Tynecastle. And for me, I've said this for a few weeks now, realistically, since I kind of swayed across to the Robbie needs to go side of things, where you start thinking, right, well, if Robbie goes, who do you get in? Um, and for me, it would be a fresh face to Scottish football. Someone that comes in without that old firm negativity.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that from anybody within Scottish football, because everybody within Scottish football knows the status quo of Celtic and Rangers are the top two and nobody gets anywhere near them. And I'm not saying I want a manager to come in and say, right, we're going to go and challenge them, because in reality that's not really likely at the moment. But we saw, and again, I'm mentioning his name not because I want him now, but because when he was here, it was seen as a breath of fresh air. And I'm talking about Daniel Stendel. He came in from outside of Scottish football and played a certain way. Some fans didn't like it. Some fans thought it was brilliant. And ultimately, he was always the right man at the wrong time,
Mm.
in terms of where we are and where we are now, or where we were and where we are now. Um, but you could see the effect that Daniel Stendel had on the fan base, because it was as I say, a fresh face that nobody knew about, and he came in with this idea. And yeah, there's people out there that say that, if the season hadn't been suspended and we hadn't been relegated, that Stendel might have saved us. There are other people that say we didn't stand a chance of staying up anyway. But that's the gamble that you take. But
Mm.
to me, and Andrew McKinley said it, and he nailed it realistically. He said, after half an hour after the announcement of Robbie going, he had CVs in his email already, which shows you. I mean, like I said before, if we finish third, it's amazing. It brings European football, and that's brilliant. If we finish fourth, say, for argument's sake, it is still a very attractive job. You
Mm.
know, Regardless of where we finish in the table, it is an attractive job. That this is a team, a club that's fan owned, has sells out every week. Okay, the atmosphere at Tynecastle has been a bit of a morgue recently, but we sell out every week. The away support's brilliant. We've got a good group of players, a team that recruitment wise are spending money on players. So, it is an attractive job, whether we have European football or not. Obviously, European football will help. Um, but there's obviously been chat about, I think, in fact, I'll just move on to my next thing. The thing for me that's going to make the summer very interesting is, if, I mean, if, for example, if Stephen Naismith doesn't work out, we don't finish third. he's not going to get it permanently. Let's be honest. I think the only way Stephen Naismith gets the job on a permanent basis is if we finish third and he does so well and we play good football, in which case, chances are they'll at least consider him for it permanently.
Hmm.
But I think, and this is something that we haven't even touched on, Aberdeen still don't have a permanent manager. Barry Robson's been given it to the end of the season. He might get it permanently, but they might be doing the same thing as us.
Hmm.
He's impressed and he's got Aberdeen back to, obviously third place, which is amazing for them. But, they've not given it to him permanently yet. So they might well be looking for a manager in the summer. Hibs, Lee Johnson, I don't know what their situation is, obviously, with the boardroom changes and things. They might want to change the manager. Um, so the summer could be very, very interesting. But what I like, and again, this goes back to what Andrew McKinley was saying, is that, the decision to let Robbie go was not a knee-jerk reaction, and that the club had been talking about it for a while in terms of options that could be out there to come in and do the job. And that shows you that there's obviously contingency plans in place, and I'm sure that Joe Savage will know people that would be interested in coming to the club. Because that's an important point as well, because not every manager would want to work with a sporting director.
Hmm.
There are clubs out there that don't have sporting directors. Would Joe Savage's job be safe if a new manager came in? Like, you just don't know. The club seem to rate him very highly and value him, so I'd be surprised if it wasn't a condition for a new manager. Look, you come in and you work with who's already here, in terms of recruitment side of things. But yeah, it'll be very, very interesting. But to me, I just think, as I say, it's an attractive job, and there have been lots of names floating about, a few names of managers in the sort of Scandinavian leagues that Aberdeen were interested in as well, or have shown interest in. A few managers from down south that could be realistic. But as I say, and Andrew McKinley said it as well, the next manager, they want a proven winner. They want somebody that's got a track record of winning games and doing well. And that's obvious. That's common sense, isn't it?
Hmm.
But we'll see. We'll see. And the thing is, like, and I said it again before, I like the way Andrew McKinley conducts himself. I like the way the board seems to be ticking over right now. And, Andrew McKinley seems to be a big part of that as the CEO. Not just his press conference that he gave, but even the statement that they put out about Robbie. There was a touch of class in there, and it basically said, we thank him for everything because he's been a massive part of the club for the last couple of seasons, and even prior to that when he was here the first time.
Hmm.
He put a lot of work in, he put a lot of effort in, and it was a decision that they didn't take lightly, but they had to do it
Hmm.
from a business point of view, to give us the best possible chance of finishing third. But yeah, in terms of the next permanent manager, whoever it's going to be, the fans will always be there. The fans are the constant of any football club. And even with Stephen Naismith, like we're talking about his first game being the Edinburgh Derby, sold out already. Um, the fans will back the club 100%, as they do and as they have
Hmm.
done for a long time. So the club are aware of that. Um, but yeah, in terms of a permanent manager for the summer, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what route we go down, because there's different ways you could do it. You could go for an experienced manager, you could go for a totally left field manager out of nowhere that nobody's ever heard of before. So yeah, I genuinely do not know what they're going to do, but it'll be very, very interesting to see.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Well, obviously, we would like to hear all your inputs for the listeners and the watchers as well, who you'd like to see in the dugout next was season as well. Obviously, we're just about to the wrap up as well, where obviously was it Naismith will be in the dugout for the Edinburgh Derby at Easter Road. So as I said, Alan, like the performances as of late from both Edinburgh teams haven't been like in entirely like the convincing. But obviously with it being at Easter Road, as I said, obviously Hibs, I think I'd like to say Hibs would probably fancy themselves a wee bit, just again from our perspective as Hearts fans, but obviously we expect some sort of was it bounce back, some sort of reaction as well. So, what's your thoughts going in to the game? Would this be the first Edinburgh derby in a while that you've kind of been a bit like I have no idea because an interesting stat we actually Hibs haven't actually beaten us at Easter Road since 2018. So with that in mind, would you say that there's a bit of a fear there in terms of if we show up in the same sort of manner as we have been that there is a potential chance that we could get absolutely steamrolled, or to actually have that like sort of was it the mainstream kind of like a first game, brand new coach, obviously all sort of players wanted like in press as well. So what are your thoughts, mate?
I think you're right. I think I don't see us being steamrolled because I don't think Hibs are capable of doing that. I don't think we're capable of steamrolling them either. But I think it'll be interesting, like you say there, in terms of what Hearts team turns up, and we'll learn a lot about these players in that game. But yeah, I mean, it's. I'd love to sit here and say I think we're going to go there and win. And we're capable. We are capable. To be honest, it'll be very very interesting to see how Naismith sets them up as well. I'm not even going to guess what he's going to do. I'm not even going to try and say what a lineup will be because I have no idea. Um, but we'll, it'll be interesting. It's very very. There's a lot of unknown about it, which is kind of
Mm.
strange. But I think, and I know having spoken to some Hibs supporters that they're a little bit, they're not very confident because, like you say there, we tend to go to Easter Road and do relatively well. And Hibs, we're speaking about like potentially not finishing third. Hibs are one of those teams that I don't worry about them finishing above us because Hibs are the most consistently inconsistent team in the league. I watched them against Dundee United, and there were periods of that game where Dundee United should have been out of sight. And then obviously Hibs brought it back, made it 1-1, and then Hibs had a few chances to go on and win the game, and they would have been disappointed that they didn't. And then obviously a penalty towards the end of the game, and Dundee United win it 2-1. But yeah, like it was it's one of those situations that what Hearts have done in getting Robbie out and bringing in a new manager, I think that will galvanize the fan base, and I think it makes people feel a bit more positive about things.
Mm.
I think if you're talking about a Robbie Neilson Hearts over the last few weeks going to Easter Road, I don't know whether it would be the wisest decision to have given him the Edinburgh Derby. There were lots of fans that said he should have been given that game, but I think if we lose that game under Robbie at Easter Road, I don't think there would have been any way back for him. I think that would have been the final nail in terms of right, you have to go now. Um, anyway, going back to it, I hope that we go there and put in a performance. I hope that the players take some responsibility and say, right, you know what, this is on us now. They've changed the manager. This is now on us to turn up and put in the performance that we know that we can. Because if we perform how we know we can win.
Yeah.
We can win at Easter Road. If every single player plays to the best that they can, we can win that game. Obviously, there won't be the one team selection I can guarantee is that Snodgrass isn't going to play, having been sent off against St Mirren.
Uh-huh.
So he's not going to pick him, which is a good thing. But we'll see. And I mean, time will tell. It's the perfect game for Naismith to start off with.
Mm.
And it'd be the perfect game for Naismith to get a positive result.
Oh, imagine.
Somebody pointed it out to me, and I've yet to fact check it. So if I say this and it's nonsense, someone please call me out on it, and I will tell the person that told me it. then it's nonsense. But apparently, Stevie Naismith made his playing debut in a 1-0 win against Hibs.
So I'm going to
So for
naturally
Hearts,
assume. So I'm going to naturally assume that that'll be your scoreline prediction. Then,
nah, nah. Nah, nah,
nah.
nah, 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 mate. This it's got 0-0 written all over it, mate. It's got 0-0 written all over it. We're nah. Look, I hope that we can get a win, and I believe that we can. I think there's a lot more positivity around the club now than there was 2 weeks ago.
Aye.
But yeah, it's going to be a draw. It's going to be a 0-0 draw, isn't it? We're getting ourselves hyped up, and it's going to be a 0-0 draw.
Well, for all those like sort of was it pinging the same as well, we would love to hear your comments and your thoughts for the Edinburgh Derby as well, and what you think a scoreline will be, and whether or not we can say that bounce back at the weekend for the Edinburgh Derby. So I think that brings us to an end for this week's episode of the Since I Was Young podcast. So thank you very much, as always, for everyone that's joined us. And if you want to check us out on our socials as well, please feel free to do so. And we will catch you all up next week as well. It could be the most dreariest episode we've done up to date next week, but the only time will tell. So from myself and Alan, we do hope you have a good week, and for all those fans traveling to Easter Road as well, we do hope you have a good one and a result to chat about as well. So from myself and Alan, you all take care, and we will see you in the next one. Bye bye for now.